Tonight, the government takes the knife to programs at home to wield a bigger sword against enemies in a dangerous world. £15 billion in extra defence spending, prioritising the technology of modern warfare.
This plan will benefit our nation because it enables us to strengthen our international leadership and build a more European NATO.
The drones Labour promised in today's headlines mainly enter service in the 2030s, when the threat we face is today.
But it's billions short of what military chiefs say they need. So will it be enough to satisfy allies? I'll ask former British US Ambassador Lord Darroch. Also tonight, as more bodies are pulled from Venezuela's earthquakes, a humanitarian crisis unfolds among the living in crowded camps. Protesters march across South Africa after setting a deadline for undocumented migrants to leave. Being born in the USA means you are American. The Supreme Court hands a stinging defeat to President Trump. And it's a knockout. England look to make it through to the last 16 of the World Cup, facing the Democratic Republic of Congo in Atlanta. All of that coming up on The World with me, Barbara Serra. Good evening and welcome to the programme. He won't be around to see it through, but today the outgoing Prime Minister presented a plan he hopes will make Britain's adversaries think again before attacking. Sir Keir Starmer finally unveiled the long-delayed Defence Investment Plan to modernise our depleted armed forces and prepare for the wars of the future. Well, here's the headline figure. £15 billion of extra funding. About £11.5 billion of that is new money, and the rest will be reallocated from elsewhere. As technology transforms conflict, drones, uncrewed submarines and self-flying warplanes are in, while the military might of the past, like Navy destroyers, are out. But the blueprint does not commit to spending 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. That's when Western intelligence assessments have warned that Russia could strike a NATO member. Well, shortly, I'll be speaking to Lord Darroch, the former British ambassador to the US. But first, this report by our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes.
It took 1 year, the resignation of 2 ministers, and heated rows over cash. But the UK does finally have an investment plan for defence that's meant to end decades of decline.
The best way to avoid war is to prepare for it. The best way to defend is to deter, to have the strength to make your adversaries think again before they act. And that is what we are delivering. Keir, nice to see you.
Strong rhetoric. Yet it's never been backed up by the kind of funding the military says it needs. Still, Dan Jarvis, the new Defence Secretary, gave the plan the big sell, having squeezed an extra £1.5 billion from the Treasury. But that only happened after his predecessor quit in protest at being shortchanged.
More money matters, of course it does, but so do the choices we make on how to spend it. And so, I have taken the decision to reprioritise a further £1 billion within the plan to ensure that it better reflects the way that war is waged today.
It also means some kit is being scrapped, with things like the RAF's Storm Shadow cruise missiles going in favour of a cheaper version. Dozens of military helicopters are being axed too, while a push to expand the cadet force is being slowed down, even though initiatives like that are seen as vital for rebuilding wider national resilience. Of course, there is a lot in here about new investments in air, sea and land drones, as well as AI and other technologies that are transforming the battlefield. But the overwhelming bulk of the investment plan is still locked into large legacy platforms, such as submarines and jets, that won't be delivered until the 2040s and beyond. It's why there's been such a big bust-up about the need for more cash faster, as that's the only way the rest of defence can possibly get prepared for a potential war with Russia by 2030. From the backbenches, the previous Defence Secretary urged the next Prime Minister to lift spending beyond the ambition set by Sir Keir Starmer of 2.7% of GDP by 2030.
With European security at stake, would my right honourable friends agree that more needs to be done in the months ahead, beyond the dip, to develop a clear, credible funding plan that will hit 3% and that will meet our NATO commitment of 3.5% by 2035?
But all of this will depend on what the man who's expected to take charge thinks, and Andy Burnham's priorities may lie elsewhere. His team is already saying they weren't told in advance that he'd need to find an extra £4.7 billion in his first budget to fund the current commitments. What is true is that more investment in defence will be good for British industry and jobs, as well as for the armed forces. Just as important, though, will be making sure what is already a large budget is spent well. And that's something the Ministry of Defence has failed to do far too many times in the past. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, Lord Darroch served as British ambassador to the United States, and before that was UK National Security Advisor. Lord Darroch, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Now, a few months ago, you said that Britain is nowhere near where we need to be when it comes to defence spending. Does today's announcement change that assessment?
It's certainly an improvement on where we were, a substantial improvement. I mean, 15 billion is a lot of money. And I think the total figure of, 300 billion over the next 4 years is also a lot of money. I think you have to treat this as a glass half full, not half empty. I think it's work in progress. I think the government will have to do more in the next 2 or 3 years, certainly to reach 3% by 2030, 3% of GDP. But look, it's a good thing that at short notice, under lots of pressure, the government has found an extra 15 billion through cutting other programmes for essential defence expenditure. So I think it's, we should welcome where they've got to while recognising more needs to be done.
Of course, not all of it is quite fully funded yet, and it's short of what the MOD had asked for. Do you think it's a credible deterrent?
Well, I think if you look at the detail of it, the detail of how it's being spent, whether on drones or on some more warships, more F-35s, also, and this is important though, they're under-recognised, better defences for our own airfields and military bases and critical points in the economy. All of that is good stuff, very sensible, just the right priorities. Of course, there isn't enough spending on some of the things we'd like to spend on, but look, it puts us still in the upper tier of what NATO countries are doing to meet the commitment that they've made. And I think it puts us in a better place for the NATO summit that's coming up soon.
I'll ask you about the NATO summit, definitely, but I just want to pick up on what you've just said. What are some of the things that we should be spending or that we'd like to be spending money on?
Well, look, 5 billion on drones. Drones are now dominating the battlefield in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians have gone from basically no production to being able to produce 4 million a year, both very short-range battlefield weapons and longer-range ones, in 4 years. Drones are a big part of the future of warfare, and I'm not myself sure that 5 billion is enough. I'd like more F-35s because our aircraft carriers are still under-resourced. We have 2 magnificent aircraft carriers and not enough planes on them. I would like more money spent on the defence of our of the homeland, of our airfields and our critical national infrastructure and our ports. But given what extra money the MOD have, I think the way they're apportioning it looks very sensible. But a key thing here, Barbara, is that they spend the money well, because as you know, procurement programs have gone way over budget in the past from the Ministry of Defence. I think the Treasury have put new measures in to try and ensure things go better, and that is crucial. This money has to be spent well.
I mean, obviously, that is a domestic conversation to be had within the UK, but then it's the image that the UK projects outside. It'll be very important, not just with enemies or adversaries, but with our own allies. And the NATO summit is just in a few days in Ankara. How do you think that this will be received by our allies?
Well, I think the Europeans will recognise that this is a substantial effort. The Germans are the kind of leaders on this, and they are spending an extraordinary amount more by 2030. And I would love us to be in the same position as them. But we're way ahead of a lot of the other Europeans, like, for example, the Italians and the Spaniards in terms of this commitment. So it doesn't put us in number one position, but it certainly puts us in the top 3 or 4. I mean, the question you may be about to ask is, what will President Trump think? I doubt he's decided yet what he will say, and he may be quite critical and argue he should have done more. But on the other hand, he himself is withdrawing US forces, or plans to, has announced that he's going to withdraw US forces and weaponry from Europe and focus it on the Asian theatre. So you could say he's doing less for Europe than, or for NATO than his predecessors had. So, I think if there's criticism from him, we'll have to suck it up. But actually, I think most of NATO will welcome what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know him more than most because, of course, you were a US ambassador during his first term. But, he's always been pressuring NATO countries, saying that they don't do enough, they don't spend enough on defense. And you have echoed some of those sentiments, saying that European countries and the UK has not been spending enough. Do you think that the UK and other countries needed the pressure of Donald Trump to at least try to increase their GDP spending?
The truth is, Barbara, that American presidents for generations have been saying Europe should spend more on defense. I remember going to NATO summits in my career where Bush and Obama were the US presidents, and they said Europe needed to be spending more. It was the brutality of President Trump's language and his threats, basically, to take America out of NATO, his questioning of whether Article 5 really applied, that actually made Europe focus. So I'm not a huge fan of many of his pronouncements, but I have to say on this, that his pressure and the way he applied it is a big factor, along with the Ukraine war, of course, war on the European continent, that has made Europe really focus and start to spend more.
Western intelligence has said that by 2030, Russia could launch an attack on a NATO member. And of course, because of Article 5, that would mean that all other NATO countries would have to come to the defense. If that does happen, does this investment plan mean that we as the UK are ready for that?
I don't think it's enough in itself, particularly in terms of defense of the homeland, as I've said. But I kind of believe that especially if we can get some economic growth going in this country over the next 2 or 3 years, then this will be part of, as I say, a work in progress rather than the final word of where we'll be by 2030. And by the way, the big factor on whether President Putin really decides to try to go further in Europe is how the Ukraine war pans out. And at the moment, the Ukrainians, in large part due to their development of drone warfare, are doing much better than they were last year. And Putin's economy, the Russian economy, is in lots of trouble. So I wouldn't be that confident about Putin's future military ambitions.
Okay. Lord Darroch, former British ambassador to the US. So we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing your views and expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to Venezuela now, where hope is fading for survivors beneath the earthquake rubble. The government has now tallied nearly 2,000 deaths, with 40,000 others missing. And the UN is growing increasingly worried about vast numbers of people sleeping for days out in the open or in crowded, unsanitary shelters. Sky's Martha Kellner has been speaking to displaced families in the capital, Caracas, who have nowhere to go.
I'm right in the centre of Caracas here. This is one of the city's main ring roads, and it's here that a makeshift camp for people displaced by the earthquake has popped up. Lots of children here in these 3 tents alone, 11 children. There's a 2-month-old baby staying here as well. This camp is being guarded by the Venezuelan security forces, the government police keeping a watch on the situation here. There are also portable toilets, washing facilities as well, but UNICEF are saying that 680,000 children are in need of urgent humanitarian assistance because of this disaster, a situation compounded by damage to hospitals, to schools and to the water system. Speaking to people here, they say that they're living in fear of more earthquakes, more aftershocks, and they say they're really just focusing on the coming hours and days, unsure what the immediate future holds for them and for their children.
We don't have clothes. We lost everything. We lost our houses, and here we are, thanks to God. We are having help with food, personal things, tents. We thank the people who have put their hands on their heart to help us. Even though the children are traumatised, they are moving forward, thanks to God. They are eating. They are playing.
Thank God nothing fell off the building, but we are scared of being there because there are gas pipes that come directly there, so we are scared of aftershocks.
I was very scared. This is the first time I've lived through an earthquake. I went down the stairs quickly and I was very scared.
How are you finding living here in the tent?
Fine, but I'm not so comfortable.
Would you want to go back to your apartment?
No, because it scares me, because it could fall and I get trapped.
Well, joining us now from one of the worst-hit areas, La Guaira, is Gabriel Becker, Distribution Manager for World Central Kitchen in Venezuela. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Now, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there on the ground and the challenges that you're facing distributing food to the people in need.
Hey, yes, so we are setting up operations here. We work generally with local restaurants to help the communities in need. We already activated in the past in Venezuela. That helped us to activate even quicker because we had already a network of restaurants and volunteers and partners that we were able to mobilize very quickly. The challenges, I think the biggest challenge is really just to find the right fit for allocating the right resource to the right purpose in that sense. And this is what we're trying to do by allocating the willingness of restaurants to help us to the people that actually need the food.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit specifically about those challenges. What is it that you're having difficulty with exactly?
So what we're having difficulties with is, in general, as I said, allocating the right resources. So it's mostly about finding a fleet, finding restaurants, finding people to help us that then help us to do the right thing, meaning delivering the food to the communities in need. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of help. We just have to find the right way to canalize it in a way that we can actually use it the most efficient and best way to help the people that need it here.
Because I'm assuming that a lot of your network, the kitchens that you said you often rely on or cooperate with, will themselves have been impacted by the earthquake.
Sorry, I lost connection. I think I didn't hear the question entirely.
Gabrielle, don't worry. Let me ask another point. Is the demand changing and also the long-term approach? Because now there'll be a lot of people there that are homeless, that are living in shelters. Are you finding more and more people coming to you to be fed? And I'm assuming that it's quite long-term, obviously. Are you getting any help from the authorities?
So we get help and support from, let's say, from a very wide audience. There's people from all across the world coming, people from other places in Venezuela coming. The other day, there were people that I spoke to that drove 15 hours, a group of 18-year-olds actually, that drove 15 hours to come here to help. So we actually get a lot of support from everyone. And as I said, it's just the question of how we are actually allocating and using the support to do what we want to do. We need to do, let's say. And in terms of how long we're going to stay, it's really, we're going to stay as long as needed. And this is what we're going to do.
I appreciate that you're probably dealing with the emergency. You know, we're still just a few days after the initial earthquakes. But when it comes to the future challenges, the weeks, the months, are you planning for that already? And if so, how do you plan to continue to feed these people for as long as they need?
At the moment, we are solidifying our restaurant network and just making sure that we're going to have enough capacity to be able to feed more people if we need to. But as I said, we're going to stay as long as needed. We cannot say how long it's going to be, but we definitely be prepared to have enough capacity to do what we, let's say, find out that we have to do.
And just on a final point, I mean, you mentioned that you get a lot of assistance just from ordinary people, young people that have bust in to help you and your network. Are you getting any assistance from the government, from the authorities? Are they involved as well in getting fresh food to people and, crucially, clean and fresh water?
I mean, so there's a lot of government involvement in the sense that you can see that there's a lot of military, that there's a lot of shelters, and all of that. We're not collaborating with the government in the sense of we're collaborating with them officially, but yes, we cross paths and we get along and see how we can make things work together in a sense, but not in a sense that we're officially cooperating with them.
Okay, Gabriel Becker, Distribution Manager for World Central Kitchen in Venezuela. Gabriel, thank you so much for finding the time to speak to us. We know it's very busy for you right now, so thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
And now we're joined by Rangel Sanchez, who ran Venezuela's emergency response agency in the late 90s, when La Guaria, that's the same area that we were just talking about, was struck by mudslides that killed up to 30,000 people. Angel, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. So obviously you had to face that disaster many, many years ago. You are not in Venezuela right now. From everything you're seeing and that you're hearing from your contacts on the ground, how does the response now compare to the response back then?
Well, thank you much. First of all, I would like to say thank you to your program and to the whole British people, because we have been receiving a lot of solidarity from your country. So we appreciate as a Venezuelan. The situation dealing with the response is something that worried me from the very, very first second of the huge two earthquake we have in Venezuela. Because we are talking of the big impact of such a phenomenon in a country that already have the worst situation to get out of it, to assist people. Because as you know, Venezuela for the last 10, 12 years have been classified by the ONU agency as a country in a very, very serious humanitarian crisis. I mean, in an everyday situation, it's pretty difficult for Venezuelans to get food, to get the money to pay the food, because the poverty is running around 82% of the country. It's pretty normal in Venezuela not to get water for a couple of days, 3 days, maybe just 1 hour a day. The same happened with electricity. The situation with the health, the public health system is the same. I mean, and that situation is the same one, but to the institution have to deal with emergency, like civil protection, fire department, Red Cross people, and the voluntary dealing with the health sector. In such a situation, the surprise, I believe the whole world is surprised, because the most important institution with the resource, people, all kind of resource, like the army and the military institution, they didn't respond since the beginning of such a big situation.
Yeah, our correspondents, forgive me for interrupting, our correspondents on the ground did speak to a lot of people who were very, very angry, who said that they were left to try to pull their loved ones from the debris with their bare hands because the authorities hadn't arrived with the equipment that, of course, would help in that endeavor. But is that something that we see in a lot of situations like this, in a lot of earthquakes, where it just does take time for the equipment to reach some of the remote areas? But you seem to be saying that from everything you're seeing, this was particularly badly handled.
That's the word. It was particularly bad handled, because the 28 hour, I would say between 24 and 48 hours are crucial to get people alive. I mean, to get people from being injured, from death. Such a situation, and if you could, beside that, the normal, regular institution, they are in the same situation that the Venezuelan, the rest of the people. They have no tour, they have no riot equipment, they don't have access to the last technology to work with such a situation. So nobody can understand that that situation happened in Venezuela.
But
it was
what
terrible.
do you blame that on?
I would say because in the last 20 years, the forces, the military forces in the country, and the same for the police force in Venezuela, the main hazard they identified for the country was the Venezuelan people who protest on the street. That means that in the budget, if you check the budget and financial project dealing with equipment and all those kind of things for the security force, it takes like 90% of the budget, while fire protection departments and civil protection organization will get at least 10%. So you can imagine they have no chance even to protect the people who work in that institution with the properly equipment, and they don't have money for training. Yep.
Sir, forgive me. Of course, the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, has said the government there is mounting a full response, that they're now coordinating with a lot of the international groups that have come, the international rescuers that have come to assist. So right now, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing the rescue and search teams on the ground at the moment going forward?
Going on to this point, there are several special, I would say, points that have to be taken into consideration. First, it's pretty important to get as much as possible through all those collapsed buildings to trying to find somebody that can be saved and taken out. Secondly, there is a lot of people who lost their home. So you need to have some type of accommodation to give those people at least place to stay and food and take some other requirements for them. And also, there is a couple of things that they haven't been in place, is a unified coordination policy to take care of all the job that had to be done to establish a real strategy and to deal with more than 27 countries that have been sent health specialized equipment for rescue and search, because they need to have a partner, a technical partner in Venezuela who had to provide to them some kind of information, where to go, what to do, what are the places that are needed.
We spoke to the UN coordinator yesterday, who did mention, he said the coordination was happening, but of course that is a priority. Angel Sanchez, so we're going to have to leave it there. Angel Sanchez, who ran Venezuela's emergency response agency during the 1999 landslides tragedy in the country. Thank you.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
And tomorrow night, we're going to bring you a special program with extended coverage of the Venezuela earthquake disaster. That's from 9 p.m. on Wednesday here on Sky News. Now, let's go to Pakistan, where rescuers are searching for survivors in the rubble of a tutoring center where the roof collapsed, killing at least 14 school children. Officials say another 8 children were injured and are being treated in hospital. There are reports that more people could still be trapped. Police say that they've arrested the owner of the center in Lahore. Let's bring you some breaking news now, coming from Scotland, where a patient is being tested for a suspected case of Ebola virus at a Glasgow hospital. It's understood the patient was admitted to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital this morning. Public Health Scotland has said this in a statement. There are currently no confirmed cases of Ebola in Scotland, and the risk to the general public remains low. As I said, it remains low. The risk from people arriving in the UK from affected areas is low, and the NHS has safe procedures in place for detecting and managing any such cases. And we will, of course, bring you more developments on that story as we get them here on Sky News. You're watching The World with me, Barbara Serra. Still to come, a fake deadline creates more fear of violence among South Africa's immigrants. And Donald Trump vows to fight on against birthright citizenship after a big setback in the Supreme Court.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Anti-immigrant protesters, some wielding wooden weapons, marched across South African cities today, marking a deadline that they set for all undocumented migrants to leave. Extra police and private security were deployed, anticipating a repeat of violence seen during months of unrest. There were pockets of trouble, including looting. Thousands of migrants are awaiting repatriation in temporary camps, fearing for their safety. Well, South Africa's government says today's protester deadline was fake and designed to cause panic. The growing anti-migration movement has drawn support among poor and unemployed South Africans who accuse newcomers from elsewhere in the continent of stealing jobs. And the anti-immigrant sentiment has strained the country's ties with other African nations. There are about 3 million immigrants in South Africa. That's according to official statistics, but there's little of any clear picture of how many of these people are there without papers. Police have been cracking down, saying they've arrested 50,000 undocumented migrants since the start of this year. Let's go to Johannesburg now and speak to Jo Vieri, an associate professor at the African Center for Migration and Society. Madam, thank you very much for joining us. I've sort of mentioned some of the reasons, but that's just an overview. What do you put this anti-migrant sentiment that we're obviously seeing in South Africa?
Good evening. What we're experiencing and what we've been witnessing over the past sort of 12 to 18 months has been the capitalization of a narrative where foreign migrants, including those who are, with a focus on those who are undocumented, are being scapegoated for failures in the state to deliver on their responsibilities and for failures in, for example, social welfare provision and employment. South Africa does face a real crisis in that it's the most unequal country globally, and the majority of citizens are struggling to access employment and other services to which they are entitled. But scapegoating foreign nationals, who, as you point out, make up around 4% of the total South African population, is a convenient political narrative. By scapegoating foreign nationals, you're evading responsibility as the state. You are finding ways where you're not holding yourselves to account, and citizens, when they're frustrated, are in many cases taking up that kind of rhetoric that is being driven by particular vigilante groups for their own political gain.
Okay, but so who do you think is stoking this sentiment? Because as you mentioned, I mean, looking at the numbers, 3 million migrants in a population of 65 million, roughly, that is the population of South Africa, isn't a massive number. I suppose it depends how quickly they all arrived. But so who do you think is fomenting the sentiment?
So there's a couple of movements that many of us would refer to as being vigilante groups, the most sort of well-known of which is an organisation calling themselves March and March. These groups are also backed by particular political parties. And it's through March and March that this so-called deadline that they imposed of the 30th of June was created. The idea being that they were demanding that all undocumented migrants from other countries should have left South Africa by the 30th of June, or the state should be deporting them. So they are using the narrative very strongly that it is foreign nationals who are to blame for the challenges that are faced in South Africa.
I mean, you mentioned that the police have said about 50,000 migrants have been arrested since January, and they will be deported, or at least they've been arrested. But what kind of numbers do you expect will actually be deported?
So it's very difficult at the moment to get clear numbers because there are varying ways in which this is being sort of counted for. There's two processes at play at the moment. One is the voluntary repatriation of individuals whose countries are then responsible for their repatriation. And the second is active deportation by the state. Both processes involve a range of legal requirements, which includes documenting individuals, processing them for either deportation or for repatriation. And the challenge that we're seeing is that individuals are being taken by buses from the cities where they've been stuck waiting for support to the border town of Messina, where there's estimated to be about 8,000 people currently waiting for processing. And we're seeing the beginning of a humanitarian crisis in that context, where resources are not being placed in order to ensure that individuals have spaces to stay, access to food, but importantly, access to legal recourse.
Okay. Well, the organizers of these protests have said that they intend to continue weekly protests. Now, so far, police said that this one was by and large peaceful, but are you worried that that may not be the case in weeks to come?
Yeah, I think there's two key challenges here. One is that this call for continuing protests every Thursday for the coming 3 months until all foreign nationals who are undocumented have been deported. But really, there's a worry now around the fact that whilst the majority of the protests have been perceived to have been peaceful, there have been some real challenges with the police and also the army being deployed. And that's what we're seeing overnight in certain spaces. There really is a concern around the ways in which this kind of uprising will cause problems for both South Africans and foreign nationals. We're hearing of people being targeted in their homes. We're seeing violent protests. We're seeing looting. And so with calls to continue this kind of action, there is a real concern about the ways in which the state can and will or will not respond, and the ways in which those who are responsible for calling for these protest actions will be themselves held to account.
Jo Vieri, co-director of the African Center for Migration and Society University. Madam, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on the developments in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is The World with me, Barbara Serra. Coming up next, how the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump violated a constitutional amendment with a flagship immigration policy.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell
tell your story.
When Donald Trump returned to office in 2025, one of the first orders he signed was to put restrictions on a rule that grants citizenship to those born on U.S. soil. It was one of the more audacious aspects of the president's immigration crackdown, and today the order was struck down by the Supreme Court. Well, our U.S. correspondent David Blevins is in Washington. So the birthright ruling, not only a key migration policy for Donald Trump, and perhaps surprising for some maybe, that it would be a conservative-leaning Supreme Court that goes against it.
Yes, and the president is not amused, but of course he went to great lengths to remove the right to citizenship from birth by not only signing that executive order on the first day of his second term, but by going to the Supreme Court to listen to the arguments in person. No other president before him had ever done that. His lawyers for the administration argued that the right to citizenship should not apply to children born to parents in the United States illegally or here on temporary visas. But of course, opponents pointed out that this right was enshrined in the 150-year-old 18th Amendment to the US Constitution, making this perhaps the most audacious attempt to redefine what it means to be an American in 150 years. But the Supreme Court ruled against the president. They have struck down that executive order and upheld the Constitution. Giving the opinion of the court, Chief Justice Roberts said the framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every free-born person in this land, and we keep that promise today. Now, the president's response came fairly swiftly on Truth Social. He posted, "The Supreme Court upheld birthright citizenship, which is too bad for our country. But we can easily make it up in Congress through legislation with the support of the president. That has now been determined during this process. No long and unwieldy constitutional amendment is necessary. Congress should start today to work on ending expensive and unfair to our country birthright citizenship. They will have my complete and total support." Well, complete and total support are not. Many are struggling to see how lawmakers here on Capitol Hill could legislate in a way that would not, in light of today's ruling from the Supreme Court, be deemed a further violation of the Constitution.
Yeah, there have been quite a few rulings by the Supreme Court that haven't gone the president's way over the past few days, but one did. In fact, quite a few we heard from today as well. One specifically about the female category in sport.
Yes, Barbara, he's describing these as big wins. The Supreme Court ruled that the states of Idaho and West Virginia had not violated the Constitution when they prohibited transgender girls from competing in female sports, something the president has talked about a lot. And in another case, initially brought by the then Senator J.D. Vance, now the Vice President of the United States, the court agreed that curbs on political campaign spending were a breach of First Amendment rights, the right to freedom of speech. What that really boils down to is that Republicans are going to have tens of millions more to spend than Democrats in the run-up to this year's midterm elections. This was the last day of the Supreme Court term. It is, as you say, a majority-leaning court, and on the whole, around 75% of cases have gone the president's way. But he's lost out on two big ones. Tariffs, one of his signature economic policies, and now birthright citizenship, one of his signature immigration policies too.
David Blevins with the latest on all of that from Washington, the U.S. Supreme Court there. David, thank you. So is the Supreme Court on President Trump's side or isn't it? That's the question that David Blevins and Mark Stone look at in the latest episode of their Trump 100 podcast. Scan the QR code on your screen right now to listen. You're watching The World. Coming up next, the excitement builds for England's World Cup clash against the DRC. We're going to be live in Atlanta with the latest.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest 'Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
OK, to the World Cup now. And England will look to progress to the final 16 tomorrow when they take on the Democratic Republic of Congo in the US city of Atlanta in Georgia. Well, our sports correspondent Rob Harris is there. Rob, some of us may be biased, and we will, of course, focus on England later. But let's just start with just a few words about DR Congo, because it's their first time ever in the knockout rounds.
It is. They haven't been in the World Cup for 52 years. Then in 1974, they were competing as Zaire. They didn't win a game, but they have made it out their group here. They got a memorable draw with Portugal in their opening game, so now preparing for their first ever meeting with England. And a moment for the Democratic Republic in Congo, given the current Ebola emergency at the moment in the country. It's really impacted some of their preparation for the tournament, for the ability for people to come from the country to the United States. Already issues with fans coming here because of the Trump travel ban restrictions as well. And a moment of joy for the country after really decades of conflict, particularly in the east with the Rwanda-backed rebels taking on government forces. In fact, it was around the time of the World Cup draw, when I was in Washington, D.C. in December, that Donald Trump was proclaiming the signing of a peace deal between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. So, obviously, hopes for that to maintain it in some form, and football bringing something to of moments of joy for the country, particularly when they qualified last year for this tournament. But now, they do have a big challenge in terms of facing England. Some familiar players in the team from the Premier League. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, formerly Manchester United, now at West Ham United. Axel Tuanzebe is now at Burnley, formerly of United as well. He scored the goal that eventually took them through to this tournament and secured qualification.
OK, Rob, well, you say they face a challenge. How exactly are England looking?
Well, they've got a few injury problems, England, particularly in the right-back position. So many issues in recent weeks with, first of all, Timo Livramento being ruled out, then Reece James now missing through a hamstring problem as well, Jarrell Konsa as well, potentially out of tomorrow's game. So many issues for Thomas Tuchel dealing with a depleted squad, but they have made it through the group, stuttering at times. 0-0 draw with Ghana after the opening 4-2 win over Croatia. It was a real challenge against Panama as well until Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane came through in the second half. Let's get the views of an England fan, joined now by one. So, how are you feeling about the game?
Yeah, I'm quite optimistic. I think we should have enough to get through. It's going to, like you said, it's going to be quite a tough night. Trying to break the teams down. We seem to struggle to break the sort of lesser teams down. When the bigger teams, they come at us, we seem to have a bit more possession. I do think we should have enough on the quality to get us through 2-0, I would say.
What's the World Cup experience been like for you, travelling around the country?
Oh well, I've been based in Toronto, and we flew into Boston, then went to the Ghana game. Got the train to New York from Boston. We stayed in New York for 3 nights. Went to the.
Are you enjoying it?
It's been brilliant. Do you know what? I didn't think the Americans would embrace the World Cup, and it really have. Everyone has been really good with us and really sweet with us. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Costly, but that commitment to England.
Yeah, it's the commitment. So hopefully we might see a trophy at the end of it.
Well, thanks for joining us live on Sky News. And yes, can England eventually win that first men's trophy since '66? First, it's about getting into the round of 16, something Germany couldn't do.
Exactly. Rob Harris with the latest from Atlanta and Georgia. Rob, thank you. And that is it from me and the team for tonight. The world returns tomorrow at 9 p.m. with a Venezuela special. Coming up next, it's Gillian Joseph with The Wrap. Good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.